Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I want to rant about Muv-Luv. Not Muv-Luv Alternative, not Muv-Luv Unlimited, just Muv-Luv, because, well, this might be one of the most interesting things I've played this year. Note that I didn't say good, I just said interesting. So, Muv-Luv is a weird story. So, it's got 3 entries, 2 of which you get in Muv-Luv Extra, and then you get the 3rd in Muv-Luv Alternative. So the general idea is that the first one is like a dating sim. It's like a visual novel dating sim. You got 2 main characters you can go for, a bunch of side characters who I didn't do. I only did the main 2 characters routes. And then it moves on to Muv-Luv Unlimited, which is literally a sci-fi side plot where the main character from the original wakes up in a world where it's being attacked by aliens and everyone's turned into a bloody military soldier. Then that carries on into Muv-Luv Alternative, which is the highest rated visual novel on VNDB. It beats out 999, it beats out the Danganronpa games, it beats out Steins Gate. Steins Gate is number 2. So, to beat that out means there must be something worthwhile here. But people have said that you need to go through the original Muv-Luv first in order to get the idea of the story, and as a matter of fact, in order to unlock the second half of Muv-Luv Extra, normally anyway, for some reason it's unlocked by default on the Vita version, to unlock Muv-Luv Unlimited, which is the beginning of that story arc, you need to actually play through the 2 main routes of Muv-Luv first, and I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't, because, you know, I said the same thing about 999, I said the same thing about Utawara Ramono, that you need to go through the first bits of, first, or at the very least with Utawara Ramono, you need to go through the second part, then you need to take on the first part, then you need to go back and do the third part. So, I went and did it. It took me about 6 hours, because I admittedly didn't spend too long listening to the voice acting or anything like that, and the second time through I did use a guide, but the 2 main heroines' route is like 100% identical. You just pick different choices along the way. It's really weird. But I got there in the end. And I just need to preface everything I'm about to say with this. Muv-Luv is 100% anime weeb trash. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. It's so weird how it's so generic. Now, I just need to put something in context. The original Muv-Luv came out in 2003. That's not only pre-Vita, that's pre-PSP. So we are talking really back far in the past there. And it still feels like a generic anime that came out last year. The only thing you'd be able to, like, tell that it's a less modern day thing than it actually is because it makes references to the bloody Dreamcast and PlayStation 2. So, yeah, it's a lot less it's apparently a lot less modern, but it feels more modern than it actually is, which is very odd. So the general idea is this. You are Takaru, or, well, I should say you are Takaru, but he's his own character, more or less. And you have a childhood friend who is basically Aho Girl, except she doesn't like bananas that much. And for whatever reason, you wake up in bed next to another random girl. There is, of course, a story and a plot, and I'm not going to spoil it here. I know I usually spoil things like this, but actually, to be fair, it was actually a decent twist. Like, I don't usually go for, like, romance plots like that, but at the same time, they actually did a really good job with it. I said that their main routes are 100% identical before. You actually get a fair bit of time with each individual character, which is nice. And by individual, I mean the 2 individuals you're going for. So you just swap between them as you go, and it's actually... well, it's actually kind of nice, if I'm being honest. I know I called it 100% trash, and I'll get to that, but they did a good job balancing between the 2 and actually making it really hard to make a decision between them. If you go with one girl, you'll feel bad about rejecting the other, and vice versa. So, you know, good job there. Also, all the times when it isn't absolute trash, it's actually pretty funny. Like, there are some absolutely random, out-of-nowhere jokes. They tend to repeat the same joke more than once. In fact, there's this one joke that gets repeated 5 or 6 times, and it gets a little bit old by the end of it. But, yeah, when they try and do something, like, so stupid that it's funny, they do it a lot, and it actually works some of the time. And some of the time it makes absolutely no sense. Also, most of the plot of this game makes absolutely no sense. They try and be realistic about it, but everyone's kind of got the idiot ball problem where they can't say what they're thinking until the very bloody end. And that's the most annoying thing about things like these. If that pisses you off, you probably want to avoid this. Also, this is entirely slice of life. So you know how in Utawaru Ramono and Steins Gate, they both start out being like really slice of life for the first half of the game, but then they eventually get a little bit more action-packed as they go on. No, it's slice of life for like the first 90% of the game, and even then, like, for whatever bloody reason, there's a bloody big gunfight, which makes absolutely no sense in the context of the game. I mean, if you take into account Muv-Luv Unlimited and Muv-Luv Alternative, it might make sense to have a gunfight, but up until that point, it makes no sense that there'd be a gunfight. But I'm not going to spoil anything. A lot of these things in this game don't make any sense. Like, one of the first bloody things that happens in the game is that every house in a couple of kilometer radius gets taken down, except for yours, your neighbors, and a random park that's actually story relevant. And for whatever damn reason this happens in one night and it makes no bloody sense. There's a lot of things like that. It's all passed off by the fact that the second heroine, the one that actually gets introduced by being in your bed for some reason, has a ridiculous amount of money. Like, seriously, it's supposed to be absolutely retarded amount of money. But yeah, it's weird. It makes no sense, and it is absolutely off the rails. Now, I can understand why people would be against this game from the very beginning, because it starts out being ridiculously weeb trash. That is the one problem, like the one real major problem that just sticks out. Like, everything else can be explained away as like personal taste, or maybe just a bit of, I'm capable of just forgetting all its little problems and just enjoying the story. But it really does start out being a bit on the nose with all the typical anime tropes. And I know it's a game from 2003, but it really does great. But if you make it through like the first half an hour, you'll probably be fine for the rest of it. It doesn't really simmer down as much as it just stays level, and just some weird, ridiculous shit happens from time to time. That's not even like traditional anime trope shit. It's just like stuff that kinda makes sense considering the characters and the story, but not really. It's so weird. I'm telling you, as I said, it's one of the most interesting things I've played, because despite the fact that it's absolute trash and makes no sense half the time, I still enjoyed it. Which is weird, because all the characters are interesting and their interactions make sense if, you give it a little bit of forethought, even though, again, they all hold the idiot ball a bit too much. Takaru is actually he's a bit generic himself, but he gives me positive feelings about people like Haku, if that means anything, or even bloody Rintaro, Okabe Rintaro. I don't know what order you put those names in, but yeah. He is a bit of a smartass. And that seems to be pretty much the default visual novel protagonist at this point, doesn't it? I mean, Okabe Rintaro, smartass. Haku, smartass. Funnily enough, Junpei isn't actually a smartass. He turns into a smartass by the third game. But anyway. So, yeah, you get the general idea. It does feel a bit generic overall, but as I said before, the characters do get, or at least the two main heroines get enough time to develop, and you do feel bad about dumping one for the other. And generally, if they make you feel bad about dumping one girl for another, because you do have to make that choice by the end, generally it's done a good job of making you feel for the characters. Like, you do have certain things going on, like, you bond a little bit with Emiya, that's her name, isn't it? Yeah, you bond a little bit with Emiya's complete ridiculous lack of common sense. And she's fun to be around. Meanwhile, you've got Sumika, who you're having like window conversations with at the end of every day for most of the game. And it's a little bit of a weird contrast going on, but at the same time, it's a good two halves to each side of the story. And there are some ridiculous fan service moments. Like, for example, you walk in on one of the main heroines in the toilet twice. Yes, this is actually a thing that happens. There is also a couple other things, like you walk in on the other heroine stripping twice, even though it's obvious it was going to happen the second time. And what was the major one? Oh, the one that made me laugh the most. And I'm going to have to say this one out loud because you won't believe me when I say it, because recently I was just playing a game where a little New Zealand boy was beating the crap out of turtles with a cricket bat. That's not the least unbelievable weapon-based thing I've heard of now, because there's a lacrosse game that's part of the plot, And the one character who looks just like a bloody cat with a gigantic bell hanging off a bloody lapel, yes, this is a thing, picks up a lacrosse stick and is whacking one of the other players across the chest with it. I don't bloody know. Yes, there is a girl who is also an absolute cat girl. Like, I'm not kidding. Bloody hair, ears, and giant bell. This bell is as big as my fist. This is just giving you an idea. Also, she's tiny, so people mistake her for an actual cat. It's fan service. It's fan servicey as hell, but honestly, it's not actually that bad, all things considered. What else is there to bloody say about it? I don't want to talk about the actual plot, because it's not actually that heavy of a plot. Everything makes sense, and you can go through it entirely in one night, because that's what I did. And it doesn't really feel like it's particularly complex or anything. Everything makes sense by the end. Well, there are a couple of things that don't. And there are a couple of things I would like some answers to. If you have played Muv-Luv, or you do plan on playing it, and I don't recommend it just yet, mainly because I still want to go through Unlimited and Alternative, but bloody hell, that contract. I'm not going to tell you what contract that is out loud, because I feel like that'd be a story spoiler, but what father would sign that contract? How much money did he have to get paid? Anyway, what else is there I can talk about? Well, the art is weird. Like, the art on the loading screen of the game when you hit the start button in the live area, 100% better than what you'll find in the actual game. There are also some technical issues. There's this weird effect that looks like it's meant to be something else, but it just makes it look like the screen's gone all corrupted. It happens from time to time, and I'm not entirely sure what that's about. There are some, I'm going to have to look up whether it's commas or apostrophes, because I can never remember which one is which. Comma, right, comma. So there are commas. It's not consistent, and I'm not entirely sure why. It's consistent in the weird way that it doesn't look consistent until you actually follow along and see, oh yeah, it's like that, so of course that comma is going to be missing. But yeah, there are a bunch of commas in the game that are just absolutely missing. And I'm not entirely sure why they are, and it sticks out like a sore thumb when they do. I feel like if they went over the game just once, they would have spotted that and been like, oh, we should have fixed that. Why didn't we fix that? And I have a feeling it's going to carry over into Muv-Luv Unlimited. There are a bunch of... Oh, there is one more technical thing as well, but I'll get to that. There are a bunch of other endings for all the other heroines too, but if I'm being perfectly honest, the game doesn't give you any real reason to go for those. I imagine it's because the original Muv-Luv was only made with the two main heroines in mind, but you can get routes with all the other characters, except I couldn't be bothered to do that, mainly because I want to get onto Unlimited and Alternative. And everything I looked up online said you're fine if you just go through with the two main heroines, but the other endings are worth going back to at some point. But again, this is me we're talking about. I'll probably never find the time. But I just wanted to point that out. The other characters do show up, and if you want to go for them, you're more than welcome to, but the game doesn't give you any major reason to do so. You don't get any major events with them, at least alone, to convince you to go for them, which is disappointing, but at the same time, I can kind of understand why, since the extra routes are more or less just a plus add-on, so whatever. And there is one other thing that I want you to keep in mind as well. You can't skip the intro movie. Now, by the intro movie, I mean the movie that plays during the game after you get woken up by Sumiya and you've been found in bed with Maya. Sumika, and you've found in bed with Maya, sorry. There's this movie that plays, it's like a minute and a half long and you can't skip it. Don't press every button when you're trying to skip that movie, because you will eventually press select. What does select do? Change your language. I don't know why you can do this in the middle of the bloody intro movie, but you can. And when the game started up in Japanese, I was very, very confused. I'm not entirely sure why that's a thing, but it is. The game has plenty of save points that you, save slots you can use, I'm sorry. But if you use a guide, you can literally blow through the entire main plot in about 20 minutes with the skip function. So it's absolutely fine. It's got the ability to tap on the touchscreen to move forward in the text, which I like a lot, mainly because I like holding my Vita like by its side, and I can just tap the touchscreen in order to avoid tapping on any particular button. And it has a fair few options, like being able to turn off the voices individually and stuff like that. Weirdly enough, you never hear Takaru's voice outside of flashbacks, and I'm not entirely sure why that's a thing. I mean, he sounds like a kid, So, you know, it's not the same voice actor, but I'm not entirely sure why they don't let you hear his voice, but it works okay. The voice acting of all the heroines is alright as well. It's nothing amazing like Utawa or Ramono, but you can tell they're putting effort into it, and it's not bad. I just found myself skipping a lot because, again, don't have time for this shit. Sorry, guys. And yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to say about it. I mean, there are a couple of other things I could talk about, like how somehow there always ends up being a guy who looks like a girl in these bloody stories. I can always talk about how they seem to not particularly appreciate gays. Like, there does seem to be a lot of that in Japanese culture. It's not bad or anything, it's just a guy saying, hey man, I don't swing that way. But it seems to happen pretty often, not entirely sure why, but it does. And there's probably lots of, it's funny, I was actually looking up the VNDB just before I was recording this video, and there is apparently a visual novel called Trans, and it's exactly what you think it is. So, yeah, it's, what do I say about Muv-Luv? It's absolute trash. It's full of tropes, it's full of expected cliches, and it is ridiculous, over the top, and half of it doesn't make any sense. But when it all wrapped up, I didn't feel myself feeling particularly annoyed by it at the very end of the day. I actually enjoyed it somewhat. I enjoyed the two main heroines, I enjoyed the general antics of everything, and when it wasn't going absolutely bloody nuts with ridiculous shit, it was actually pretty melancholy, pretty respectable. And it's funny that you can say that in the same game when someone's whacking someone across the boobs with a lacrosse stick, but you get the general idea. It was okay. Definitely not something I'd recommend starting with if you haven't done the whole Japanese visual novel thing yet, but at the same time, considering that I've been desensitized to this, and I wonder what the me of 6 years ago, just before I went into a store to pick up a Vita, would say if he saw me playing this garbage. I really don't know. But yeah, that was a quick rant about Muv-Luv. Not Muv-Luv Unlimited or Muv-Luv Alternative, but just Muv-Luv. It's not that bad. It's alright. The characters are good. The story is alright. It's surprisingly enjoyable for being as cliche as it is, and I will be getting onto Muv-Luv Unlimited and Muv-Luv Alternative because, well, if it beats out Steins Gate on the top VNDB charts, there's got to be something good here, and thankfully it appears that I am over the hump. So, yeah. If you don't like your cliche anime plots, you're probably going to want to avoid this one. But then again, with Alternative coming along, well, we'll see what I have to say after that, won't we? I don't know when I'm going to get around to Unlimited and Alternative because I'm literally waiting for 3 other games to come in right now. But yeah, I'll get around to them at some point. My interest has been piqued. So there you go. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.